My name is Diane Bada. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and in this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I wanted to make a video that explores some of the psychological themes that come up in the film Anora. As most of you watching probably know, it won the Oscar for Best Picture at the beginning of this month, which surprised some people, didn't surprise other people. I watched it, loved it, and obviously being a therapist had a bit of a psychological lens when I was in the theater, but I thought that it did a great job of basically portraying a lot of different psychological themes, a lot of different psychological experiences. So I wanted to make a video on it. Sean Baker, his work historically has really looked at people who lived on the fringes of society, so marginalized people, disenfranchised people. Not surprisingly, that brings up themes relating to power, control, belonging, identity. Those are some of the major themes that are at play in this film. So let's dive in a little bit and talk about some of the key ones that are at play. This video will have some spoilers, so if you have not seen the film and don't want anything spoiled, I would advise you to not watch it. But if you're curious, if you don't care, if you've already seen it, you'll be able to follow along better. The first themes that we get a sense of in terms of a theme that's going to be important in the film is identity. Yeah, on a deeper level, on a big picture level, the film really raises questions of how much of our identity is self-imposed and how much of our identity is imposed by others or imposed by society, and to what extent can we then escape it or transcend it. We see hints that Anora is not entirely sure of her identity from the start of the film. So she refers to herself as Annie instead of Anora, her given name. Annie, an Americanized name, it has like a playfulness to it. Anora is maybe not as much of a trendy name, but it's, I think the meaning, if you look it up, means grace. So it's not a fun, flirty type of name, but it was an interesting choice for the filmmaker to name her that, right? We also see that she can speak Russian, but she doesn't like to, and part of that can just be convenience, or maybe feeling uncomfortable if it's not the language that she typically uses. I can speak Spanish. I tend to be a little bit shy about speaking it sometimes just because it's definitely not as good as my English, but that is another detail that stands out when we think of her identity and who she is. So she chooses not to see herself as Russian American so much, but more as American. And it's quite ironic then that she ends up marrying somebody who is basically, the son of a Russian billionaire. But we see her then getting rejected by the people who symbolize the culture that she's from, which is another interesting detail. The other characters, particularly Vanya or Ivan, are also struggling with identity. So Vanya, Ivan, he's a kid. He says he's 21, might be lying about that. He could be much younger, but we don't really get a sense that this person has much of a sense of self. He spends his time playing video games, smoking pot. He seems to be a bit of a party boy who is controlled by his parents and doesn't have any freedom or independence. He kind of, pretends to be, I think, ready for something that he's really not ready for, which ultimately burns Anora in the end. But he's kind of a guy who talks a big game, right? Oh, this is my mansion. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get you this big ring, blah, blah, blah. But when push comes to shove, the image that he portrays is completely false, and there's nothing underneath it. And another interesting exploration of maybe the contrast between how a person presents themselves and how they really are, which in some ways is almost a foil to Anora, who I think most people tend to underestimate, and who ultimately is quite a strong person, as the film reveals. Another major theme, and I think one that made me want to do this video because it's relevant to the rest of the videos on this channel, is the impact of trauma. So Anora alludes to there being a trauma in her past. It's likely that may relate to sexual assault or something like that. We get the sense that she hasn't really confronted it. She comes across as somebody who is kind of hard, tough, doesn't really let her emotions come to the surface much, not until the end of the film, really. But nevertheless, the impact of those emotions, the impact of trauma, does surface. So one interesting way that we see this is in her treatment of Igor. Igor himself, a pretty complicated character. Like Anora, he is somebody who basically used for his physicality. He uses his body for a living. But he is probably the main character to really treat her with respect and compassion and try to see her for who she is. But she treats him like crap, at least initially. We don't know what happens after the film ends, but she is insulting him constantly. She kind of challenges his masculinity. She implies that he is a rapist, just all of these things. And we end up realizing that she's probably just pushing him away because she's terrified to let in somebody who could actually see her and who could actually be compassionate to her. We don't know if she's ever experienced that. In her line of work, she's just accustomed to being treated like a piece of meat, an object, engaging in transactional interactions and relationships. And so he represents something completely new and different, and that may be frightening. We know that she is Russian American, which hints at maybe a family legacy of some trauma. The vast majority of immigrants to the US came to escape conditions that were often terrible, right? So we don't know the full story about her parents. We don't know the full story about her mom. We know that her mom lives in Miami with her boyfriend. We're not really given much else, and we get the sense that she doesn't really want to talk too much about her family. That is, it's definitely another major theme, although it's more kind of in the background. But anybody viewing the film with a psychological mindset certainly is picking up on it. Another theme is connection, belonging. We see Anora really looking for a place to belong. She certainly doesn't get that at work. We get the sense that her coworkers are kind of always ripping on each other. There's a bit of rivalry, there's tension. She doesn't feel that her employer fully respects her. She doesn't have benefits. We find her looking for her place. And for a second, she believes that she finds that in Ivan or Vanya. But probably one of the most heartbreaking moments of the film is when she's all excited to meet his family and his mother, and introduces herself using her Russian name, interestingly, and is met with just complete coldness and complete dismissiveness and disrespect. So this is somebody who feels that, maybe after all this time of feeling so isolated, so alone, so misunderstood, that she will meet people who value her company. Unfortunately, that is very much not the case. The treatment that she receives by his family brings me to the last major theme, the last major psychological theme. There are so many themes in this film, but the idea of power and control and agency. We get the sense that Anora doesn't have much control over her life. She doesn't feel a great sense of agency. This is mirrored by the employees, the family's employees. We see housekeepers, we see servants, we see the kind of hired muscle, the people that are basically hired to keep tabs on Ivan or Vanya. These people don't have much agency. They do a job that they don't enjoy because it's stable, because they don't have too many options. We also see the way that agency is tied to ethnicity. There are a lot of derogatory comments in the film that are made about about Armenians, for instance. And for those without knowledge of that part of the world, Russians and Armenians, it seems that Ivan's family looks down upon them, and they will hire them, but they are going to treat them with disregard and disrespect. And similarly, Anora is in the same boat. So she is viewed as somebody who is just simply not an equal, despite her thinking that the marriage to her son will make that different. We come to realize that she is seen as kind of a fun distraction by Ivan, and that places her on the level of the help, which is, of course, crushing to Anora, but to the viewer, it also it feels like a bit of a slap in the face, because you start to empathize with her and are wanting her to not be treated in this way. I think a lot of people kind of missed the meaning of the film. I think people who thought that it didn't deserve awards maybe weren't paying as much attention as they could have. I think the film really does a great job of discussing so much And other themes that are not necessarily psychological, you have class. That's a big one, right? But ultimately, it's a huge kind of meditation on identity, the impact of trauma, belonging, isolation, and power and control, and the extent to which a person can achieve that in their own life. I would encourage anybody watching this to see it if you haven't. I really enjoyed it. It's a great film in terms of really portraying this idea that the journey towards self-understanding is often really messy and not linear and not enjoyable, and that many times some of the greatest periods of growth in life come from things that we thought at the time would break us and turn out not to. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. If you liked it, feel free to like the video, subscribe, post a comment, share with friends. I may do some videos on other films. I haven't done that before, so we'll see. Could be something brewing, but thanks for watching. Take care.